Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. I hope you guys are all having a wonderful Monday. Today we're going to be talking about the Crested Gecko market and how things have changed over the past 5 years. Specifically, we're going to be looking at juvenile Crested Gecko prices by morph and how they have either increased or decreased in price over the last 5 years. This is kind of a follow-up video to the one I made about 6 months ago, talking about how Crested Gecko prices have doubled in the last 5 years. In that video, we took a look at males, females, and juvenile/baby crested geckos to see how their prices have increased since 2017, or roughly 5 years ago. If you haven't seen that video already, I'll definitely recommend you watch that before you come to this one. I feel like that kind of sets the stage for what we're going to talk about today, and kind of sets some of the information up for you before we jump into this one. But if you've already seen that, you'll remember that juvenile crested geckos in the last 5 years had the biggest price increase when compared to adult males and adult females. They increased by roughly 248% as a whole, which is a significant increase, 2.5 times more expensive over the last 5 years when compared to 2017. So I kind of wanted to break it down further for you, and I thought it would also just be interesting to take a look at how prices have changed and how times to sell have changed over the last 5 years by 5 popular morphs. So we're going to be taking a look today at some prices and times to sell and see how things have changed over the last 5 years. So just like the last video I made talking about this, again we're going to be using MorphMarket, a great resource when looking at past geckos that have sold. And we're going to be analyzing 5 different morphs. I kind of tried to spread it around and pick some things that were very popular so I could get enough data, and just because I figured that's what most people are working with. So we're going to be looking at extreme harlequins, pinstripes, dalmatians, reds, and lily whites. I figured that kind of encompassed a good range of things to take a look at today. And so without further ado, let's get right into the video. But first, a couple disclaimers that I have to make about this data. Number one being that the price, again with MorphMarket, is likely not 100% accurate. On MorphMarket, when you sell an animal, whether you negotiate it or not, unless you go back and change it, it'll stay for whatever you had it listed at. For an example, I have a gecko for sale for $500. Joe Blow offers me $400 and I take it. Chances are I'm not going to go back and edit it to $400. I'm just going to mark it sold as $500. So with that being said, I would say you could probably take the prices in this video from 2017 too, but also this year, and probably subtract an easy 10 to 25% off of that. And one thing to consider is a lot of small breeders will negotiate with you on price. A lot of the big breeders will not do negotiations, but they will do sales of up to 50% off. And a good example of this is a gecko I bought recently, was marked sold on MorphMarket. And nothing against the breeder, I'm just using this as an example. They've marked it sold as the full price, and I had purchased it on a 50% off sale. And so the difference in price that I got it for versus what it was sold for or marked sold for was close to $2,000. So you can imagine how over multiple geckos that could really start to add up and mess with this data. So I just want you to keep that in mind. Now, one other thing that I did in this video was track time to sell. I thought that would be a very interesting statistic as well. Last video, or 6 months ago, we looked at the price increase, but not how long it took them to sell. So that's something I wanted to add in this video. And with that personally, I would say you could probably add roughly 10 to 25% on the amount of time it took them to sell. The reason being is a lot of people take their geckos down for sale in summer, winter, or for personal reasons. Maybe they think they're going to keep it and then list it up later. But especially for summer and winter, a lot of people take their geckos down, including myself, and then relist them. So I know I personally have sold geckos that have been for sale for more than a year, and they've only been marked sold for maybe like 2 weeks or something like that. So I'd say you could add time to the days sold and subtract price, both in 2017 and in 2022. Now I might be wondering, well, what the heck, if this data is not even right, why even make this video? But I think this really still sets a stage for what's going on in the Crested Gecko market in 2022. And I argue that this would be one of the best videos on YouTube at the moment of the Crested Gecko market in 2022 and what's actually going on. So without further ado, let's jump right into the video with our extreme harlequins. There's going to be a lot of numbers in this video. I'm kind of going to try and speed through it and give you my thoughts on it. But I don't want this video to take all day, so I'm going to try and go through it semi-quickly, just so you guys get the point. But anyway, in 2017, extreme harlequins, and this is again for all babies and juveniles throughout all 5 morphs, the average price was $130 roughly. The average days to sell was roughly 44 days. In 2022, the average price was $426 roughly, and the days to sell was roughly 69. That's a price increase of 325%, or just over a 3x in price over the last 5 years. And the days to sell, that's a roughly 150% increase, or 25 more days it took to sell in 2022 compared to 2017. So what does that mean? Well, extreme harlequins have, yes, increased a lot in price, but the amount of time it takes to sell one on average has also increased by almost a month, meaning that you're going to be selling your baby crested gecko, your extreme harlequin, for more money, but you're also going to have to keep it for almost more than 2 months. 2 months and 10 days, or roughly 2 months and, almost 2 weeks. That's a long time to hold on to your baby crested gecko from the time you first posted it to the time it actually sells. So not off to a great start here, honestly, but it does get better, trust me. Anyway, moving on to Dalmatians. In 2017, the average price was roughly $94. I'm not going to keep saying roughly. These are all averages, give or take. There is decimal points here, but it doesn't make a huge difference. The days to sell was 30. In 2022, the average price was $187. The days to sell was 37 days. So that's a price increase of 200%, or almost exactly double. The days to sell, 123% increase, or 7 days more. Not too shabby. Prices have doubled, and the days to sell is only a week more. Not bad at all for the regular Dalmatian. That's pretty good, honestly. You're getting double the price, but only 7 more days. I think a lot of people would take that deal. Moving on to our good old classic pinstripes here. Also want to shout out Anthony Vasquez, I believe, from Little Monsters Reptiles. He mentioned on my last video 6 months ago that originally pinstripes were very sought after and very expensive, and now they have came down in price. So it's kind of interesting to see where they're at these days versus when they first came out. And he said that they were very expensive when they originally came out in the early 2000s. Anyway, in 2017, the average price was $123. The days to sell was 46. In 2022, the average price was $265, and the days to sell was 50. That's a price increase of 216%, a little bit more than double. And days to sell was 108%, or 4 days more, which is so far the lowest that we've seen, which is really good. That means this and Dalmatians are very stable when it comes to the time it takes to sell. Yeah, it's a little bit of an increase, but you're also looking at a more than double in price over the last 5 years. So not too bad at all. Obviously, those are pretty established morphs. They're pretty stable and just kind of continuing on, chugging along this path. Now here's where it gets a little bit interesting. Reds. And again, one thing I didn't mention is that there could be overlap in these categories. Obviously, you could have a red Dalmatian pinstripe extreme harlequin. Is that possible? Yeah, that's possible. So there could be a little bit of an overlap here in some of the geckos that I examined. Overall in this video though, I examined over 800 geckos, somewhere between 800 and 1,000 lizards. So that was a lot of data to go through. For 2022, I analyzed 100 geckos per morph, and for 2017, I pretty much analyzed as many as sold in 2017, which was anywhere between like 40 and 100. So I analyzed a lot of geckos for this video. So I would say these averages are relatively accurate, other than what I mentioned at the beginning of this video with marking them sold. But anyway, reds in 2017, the average price was $103. The days to sell was 53, pretty high. In 2022, the average price was $312, and the days to sell actually went down to only 34 days. So that's a price increase of 303%, roughly a 3x in price. And the days to sell is 35% less than what it used to be, or roughly 19 days quicker, which is crazy. That means reds are really bumping right now, basically. Not only has the price more than tripled, but the time it takes to sell them has also went down, which is the first that we've seen out of the 5 that we're going to look at. And 19 days quicker too. So it's only taking about a month now versus when it was in 2017, which was almost 2 months, just shy. So that's pretty good if you ask me. That means pretty much anything with red in it. It could be red extremes, pinstripes, Dalmatians. You get the gist. Is really popular at the moment. Now, lily whites, I wanted to include this one in here because it's one of the first true morphs that we really saw. And unfortunately, I didn't have any data from 2017 because obviously they're still pretty new then. So this data is from 2018 to mid-2019 summer. The average price was $1,067. The average time to sell was only 23 days. That's the quickest we've seen out of any of them so far. Now in 2022, the average price is $913, and the days to sell is just about 50, hovering at a high 49. That's a price increase, well, actually a price decrease of 15%, and a time to sell of 213% increase, or 26 days more. Meaning, unlike the reds we just looked at, which had a price increase and less time to sell, these are the opposite. The price is going down and they're taking longer to sell, which is obviously not good. So lily whites, that encompasses everything. Again, even red lily whites, which would be an interesting data point. But anyway, lily whites were by far the biggest increase in time to sell and price decrease. They're the only one that went down on this list. Now that we have all these random numbers floating around in our head, let's actually put it on a chart and try and visualize what's actually going on. I think this will bring a really clear picture to what's popular and what's not at the moment. So our first chart here is the price chart. As you can see on the y-axis, we have price. On the x, we got the morphs along with the year. And you can see that purple is represented as 2017 and blue is 2022. Of course, with the exception of lily whites, which is 2018 to mid-2019 or so, just because there was no data for 2017. So let's just go through them quickly and see what we got here. So extreme harlequins, you can see that they've significantly increased in price by almost $300 on average for your average juvenile extreme harlequin. Remember, these are all juvenile prices. Dalmatians, you can see that they doubled in price over the last 5 years. Pinstripes, again, almost a little bit more than double. So they're kind of on a steady path. Extreme harlequins are more on an exponential curve of going up. Dalmatians and pinstripes are more on just a linear path of increasing in price. You can see reds are more like the extreme harlequins. They're also more on an exponential curve. They have more than tripled in price over the last 5 years. And the only one on the chart to actually go down is our lily whites here, which decreased by about a little bit more than $1,000 in the last 5 years. So they're the only ones that have went down. Extreme harlequins and reds appear to be doing very well, and Dalmatians and pinstripes are kind of just on that average upward swing along with everything else. Now try to keep those prices in your mind as we take a look at our days to sell chart here, because it's going to paint a little bit of a different picture than we just got done looking at if you only analyze the price chart. So here we have the days to sell chart is on the y-axis. Again, the morphs are on the x with the years. Again, 2017 is in purple, 2022 is in blue, with the exception of the lily whites. So let's go through them again and see what we got now. So extreme harlequins, if you remember, they went up significantly in price by almost $300 on average. But now take a look at their days to sell, which also increased significantly by almost 25 days, or almost 1 month extra that you're going to have to hold on to them to get that average price. So you can see extreme harlequins maybe aren't as popular as we thought by just analyzing the price chart. Now Dalmatians, on the other hand, didn't fare nearly as bad. They not only doubled in price, but they're only taking about a week longer to sell, which is pretty good. Again, they're just kind of on that linear upswing along with most other morphs of Crested Gecko. And pinstripes also are on just kind of they're kind of chilling. They're only taking 4 days more to sell, and they also more than doubled in price. So Dalmatians and pinstripes are just kind of chugging along. Extreme harlequins are kind of funky because, yeah, they're selling for more, but they're also taking a lot longer to sell as well. Now let's take a look at our reds here. You can see that in 2017 they were selling on average 53 days, but now in 2022 they're only selling for 34, which is the only one to decrease on this list as time to sell. And basically what that means is that reds are really popular right now. Red anything, red Dalmatians, pinstripes, extreme harlequins, whatever it is, as long as it has reds, it is obviously very popular right now, because not only did they more than triple in price, but they're also selling faster. So reds are obviously really popular right now in the community, and everybody wants reds. Lily whites, on the other hand, aren't doing so well. They're by far the worst one on this list. You can see that they were at 23 days, roughly in 2018, 2019, or about 3 years ago. And now today, they're at 49 days, meaning that it's more than doubled the time that it takes to sell your average lily white. And not only that, the prices also came down. So unlike the reds, they're basically the opposite. They're getting less popular, or at least they're taking longer to sell, and they're losing their value over time. So maybe if you're in the market for a lily white, now's a good time to buy, or you can just wait as they continue to come down in price, Reds, maybe it's a good time to sell if you have some because they're obviously very popular right now. And the Extreme Harlequins is kind of an interesting one because they increased in price, but they're also significantly increased in time to sell. So I think this chart really helps put it all together, and you can see what's popular right now. Obviously, Reds are popular. Dalmatians and Pinstripes are just kind of chugging along. Extremes are somewhere in the middle, and Lily Whites are, by this data, getting a little bit less popular and getting less in value, which isn't necessarily bad if you're looking to buy. So some things you might be wondering, why are prices increasing? Well, it's kind of a complex subject. Next video, I'm going to be talking about some things on how you can sell crested geckos better in 2022, and just some things to hopefully help you out if you're a new breeder, or maybe even the experienced keeper could learn something from that. But anyway, I would say one of the big things that's driving price in 2022 is definitely competition. I really feel like after the virus outbreak of 2020, that a lot of people got interested in crested geckos, probably because everyone was staying home and they were looking for things to do. And so personally, I feel like there was a big boom in popularity right around 2020. So it only makes sense that there's more increased competition in the next few years to come because a lot of people are now producing babies, etc., etc. And just to kind of prove that, I guess, even though it's a little bit late, I have a screenshot for here from 7/1/2021. There was 981 crested geckos available on MorphMarket. 6/4/2022, which is right around when I'm recording this video, there is now 2,414 crested geckos available. That's like 2.5 times more crested geckos available right now than there was a year ago. So there's a lot more competition now, which you would think would drive prices down. But also just the general popularity of crested geckos is also increased right at an optimal time, I think. So that's kind of outweighing each other, I feel like, right now. Because obviously in a normal situation, if you have more supply and less demand, prices would go down. But right now we have, I feel like, more supply but also more demand, so they're going up. Anyway, there's also a lot of world factors going on. As we all know, inflation is beating everything up and raising the prices on literally everything. So it would only make sense that crested geckos continue to go up along with literally everything else. So that's a good idea of why crested geckos are going up, in my opinion. But now I just wanted to talk to you about some other random things that I thought about while making this video and going through all these data points on these crested geckos, and just some things I noticed. Now, this next part of the video is not based on any sort of fact. This is all just my opinion on going through this data and things I've just seen as of late on Instagram, social media, whatever. Anyway, I made up this chart here that you see. Don't mind the names. That's just labels I gave them so we could talk about them and you know which one I'm talking about. But I made this chart here kind of to show you something I was thinking about making this video. And so what we have here is a bunch of circles surrounding other circles. Very intelligent, I know. But the beginner keeper here is this outer circle. And what this represents is everybody who's keeping crested geckos, and most likely, in my opinion, kind of the price range that they would be in when getting this animal. So, that beginner keeper, that first time crested gecko keeper, is going to be getting geckos probably less than $200. They just want a nice pet. They want to learn about crested geckos. And obviously, this is the green circle that encompasses everybody. This is the largest group of people. The people who either own one gecko or they own 1 million. Everybody's in this group, obviously. Now, the next step up from that is your beginner breeder, your hobbyist, that person who's just starting out breeding or just keeping multiple crested geckos. They're probably willing to, spend $1,000 on an animal on that really nice subject, something they want to work on and maybe get more serious about in the future as they get deeper into breeding. Next up, we have advanced breeders. I didn't really know what to call this category. Advanced breeders, advanced keepers. You can call it whatever you want, but basically this is the next group of people. And as you can see, the circles are getting smaller and smaller here, meaning that there's less and less people in this group of people. And this group is willing to probably spend, I would say, a couple $1,000s, let's just say, on crested geckos. These are people who are serious about breeding. Maybe they're doing it full time. Maybe they're doing it just as a hobby. But these are people who are, taking it seriously, but they're not at that crazy gecko people status, as you see in the middle here by the red circle. And the crazy gecko people are really anybody who's buying those next top of the line, axanthic, cappuccino, frappuccino, super cappuccino, lily white, head axanthic, charcoal line geckos. Anyway, they're buying the top tier geckos. They're buying the most expensive animals available, that next new exciting thing. And that is a very small minority of people. That's like 1% or less of people who are buying those kind of animals. And so this chart represents everybody in the Crested Gecko community as a whole. The green circle does. And obviously, the higher your prices get, as you can see by the red arrow, the smaller the group of people who is either going to buy them or can afford them, whatever you want to call it. And obviously, as Crested Gecko prices get more expensive as a whole, the people who can buy those animals is going to get smaller as a whole. Really what it boils down to is that people aren't making, more and more and more money in their day jobs, whatever, to buy these very expensive animals. Obviously, as Crested Geckos get more popular, yes, there's going to be more people in those groups, but those groups are always going to be relatively small compared to the larger group of people who has one or two animals, if that makes sense. So I think we're going to kind of eventually see maybe a small reversal of Crested Gecko prices, because I don't think it's sustainable right now where we're at and how expensive the majority of Crested Geckos have gotten as a group. And the reason I'm saying this, that we might see a reversal, at least a little one, as far as prices go, is because I've seen a lot of people including myself, I'm not pointing the finger here, I'm just saying that when I go on Instagram every day, almost every person is saying, sale here, sale there, willing to negotiate on this or that, and that, including myself. Again, not pointing the finger, just saying people are having a hard time moving these higher end animals just because simply there is so many of them. Everybody's charging ridiculous prices. Again, not pointing the finger, just saying. But everybody's asking a lot for their animals. I'm not against that. I'm just saying that the groups of people who can afford these animals is small. And so if everybody's charging these prices, well, yeah, there's gonna be people buying them here and there, but not everybody can afford to buy those animals. So a lot of them are gonna sit and sit and sit some more. And that's another thing that I wanted to talk about kind of after going through this video and looking at all these geckos for sale, because obviously I saw a lot of them. The overall quality of Crested Geckos over the last 5 years has increased. Yes, I would not argue that it has stayed the same. Crested Geckos have continually gotten nicer and nicer and nicer, as they should, from a human's perspective, that is, and what we look for when breeding. However, I don't think that the quality has I don't think the quality has caught up to the price. I think the price has far exceeded how nice Crested Geckos have gotten, if that makes sense. The quality hasn't changed drastically enough to justify how much prices have increased. That's a better way of putting it. And so I think that we're going to see a small reversal eventually, like I said. Just because geckos have changed, yes, but they haven't changed that drastically from 5 years ago, where Crested Geckos, specific morphs, should be 3x'd in price, if that makes sense. Another thing that I've seen a lot of, and I'm not pointing the finger here because I'm guilty as well. This is just my opinions, by the way. I'm not ranting here or mad or anything like that. I'm just saying, just what I've noticed. Everyone says they have high-end Crested Geckos, but obviously, if everybody has high-end Crested Geckos, then none of them are high-end. High-end really means that top-of-the-line animal, that really nice animal. You can't have all high-end Crested Geckos because then they're not high-end. I mean, compared to other people, you might have nicer geckos, and even in your collection, you're going to have geckos that are nicer than each other. They can't all be high-end. It just simply is not possible. So I think a lot of people get confused here, and maybe, too, it's also maybe a newer keeper thing or a new hobbyist thing, but I think a lot of people think if they buy a gecko for $700, that automatically makes the babies worth $700 as well. I've seen some geckos that have sold, and I'm cringing. I'm hoping people did not pay, the ridiculous amounts that they paid for them. Not in an angry way. It's just like, I think they're going to be disappointed when they pop out a bunch of $100 geckos and they think, they're worth $700. And that's how I feel like we got into this cycle. Not ranting, just being honest here. And, I'm not saying my geckos are any better than anyone else's, just giving you my opinion here on what's transpiring. And I think that there's still deals to be had, though. Even though we're in a time where everything's more expensive, there is still people who I know specifically, breeders I go to, because I know that they always price their geckos very, what I would consider to be fairly, and they have good animals, and there is just deals to be had out there. I got one in last week, this very nice red porthole animal. I'm thinking, man, good thing, I bought this animal. It's very, very nice. And I feel like I got a good deal on it. You always want to feel like you got a good deal on your Crested Geckos. And now I'm kind of just rambling on. But anyway, there is deals to be had more expensive does not equal more better. I think a lot of people get confused by that. I can charge whatever I want for my geckos, but at the end of the day, the market is going to determine what they're worth, and that's really going to determine how quickly they sell or do not sell. But more expensive geckos does not mean they're better automatically. I'd say that's a highly false statement, actually. When I really think about it, quality is quality no matter how much it costs. It just depends what it is worth to someone else, really. So with that being said, we're going to talk a little bit more about this in a different video on some things to keep in mind, some things on how to be successful if you're trying to sell crested geckos. Obviously, I'm no beacon of success when selling animals. I sell a small amount of animals every year. I don't sell a large volume, but I feel like there's some things to be learned, maybe. And with that being said, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. This took me a lot of time to put all this data together. And with that being said, I hope to see you in my next video.